Welcome to a little recording on how I learn Latin. I've written for myself a little application that is kind of like Clozemaster, except that the parallel corpus in play is the Bible rather than Tatoeba. By the Bible, I mean the Vulgate in parallel with the King James Bible in English. And as you can see by this little report, I'm tracking coverage of the total verses in the Bible or sentences, of which there are about 31,000. And I have experienced about 7,000 of those sentences. That is, Genesis 1:1, that would be a sentence. So a book, chapter, verse, triple constitutes a sentence in this game. And you can see that R for R, ready for review. I have about 6,000 of them ready for review according to the spaced repetition scheme in this game. And because the Bible as a whole is such a vast book, I've actually broken it down into the individual books, of which there are 66, besides the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the words of Christ as well. You can see that my coverage in Genesis, in terms of having at least one impression of each book, chapter, verse, triple, is 100%. So typically, I don't bother mastering a book to master the flashcards or whatever. I prefer to move on to another book where I don't have so much coverage. So right now, I'm actually working on the Gospel of Matthew, of which I have 89% coverage. And as always, with this kind of learning with flashcards, the focus is really correct response to flashcards that you haven't seen before. Again, you're really building a skill. You're not trying to memorize a lot of facts like the capitals of the countries of the world or something silly like that. Now, with Latin, unlike modern languages, you don't really participate in conversation, but you'd like to be able to read a bit more easily something like Caesar or Cicero. But how are you going to really read Caesar and Cicero if you're just focusing on the Bible, of which the grammar is a bit less complex? Sure, but you're going to pick up a lot of vocabulary, and the other advantage of the Bible is that it's already a highly parallel corpus. I'm studying Latin in parallel with English, but you could also study Greek in parallel with English, or Greek, Latin, and English in parallel if you wanted to add a feature to this little application, and so on. So these are just the statistics in this report on all 66 books of the Bible. And yeah, so long spiel at the intro. That's fine. I'm just going to click on the word Matthew, title of the book. And ordinarily, the ritual starts with Evan de Milner, the private scholar of the Latin language, reading the Lord's Prayer. And I think this is a painting of Jerome reading or writing the Bible. So we have this audio, what you hear and what you see, to really condition the lower parts of the brain to make this an atomic habit, a term coined by James Clear. The idea, I'm not even playing it, but the idea is that you just do this 10 minutes a day, but every day. So for me, Latin is really on the back burner. I really want to learn it. And whatever the benefits are, whether mastery of etymology or better thinking, better English speaking, and so on, whatever those benefits are, I do want to pick them up, but I don't want to allocate too much effort. So it's really just 10 minutes a day. And how do you prevent forgetting? You don't just make it a rule. You have these sensual things that you're used to experiencing. I'm used to seeing this picture, used to hearing this prayer. So if that becomes a lack in my life, then I'm more likely to notice and to then successfully go back to the application, repeat the ritual, etc. So again, it's just I'm talking. So we have a close exercise. Typically, I'm going to read this out loud. You're going to hear me attempting restored classical pronunciation. Sic non est voluntas ante patrem vestrum, qui in caelis est, ut pereat unus de probably minimis, nope, pusillis istis. I've played this before, but the idea, well, minimis, pusillis, the little ones, former slaves of the freemen. And if I hit enter, the translation in English is exposed. 40 stands for Matthew, so it's Matthew 18:14. Even so, it is not the will of your Father which is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Typically, I won't read the English out loud. I'm just going to go to the next one. Dum autem ierent emere, venit sponsus, et quae blah blah erant, in traboront cum eo ad nuptias, et clauses janua. So venit sponsus, et quae, okay, and while they went to buy, dom autem ierent emere, the bridegroom came, venit sponsus, and they that were ready went in with him, et quae paratai, woman perhaps, erant in traboront cum eo ad nuptias, et clausa est janua. And yeah, you can look at the translation before you answer. Submit. And next. Haec cautem, blah blah blah, ecce, angelus domini in somnis apparviti dicens Joseph, fili David, nodi timere ac cippere Mariam conjugem tuam, quod enim in natum est de Spiritu Sancto. Okay, not est, the two S's, I'm not sure. Quod enim in natum est de Spiritu Sancto est. So something, it's going to be an ablative absolute. And you get used to ablative absolute in the Bible. Its grammar is not so poor that you don't have some of these features of Roman Latin. So, haec cautem eo, but while he thought on these things, I don't know, eo cogitante. Yeah. So, haec cautem eo cogitante. And for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Ghost. Et beatus est qui non fuerit, boom, 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 blah, in me. Beatus est qui non fuerit, blah, in me. Not be offended, scandalizat, non fuerit scandalizatus in me. And blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. Illi autem abeuntes, blah, 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 sepulchrum, signantes lapidem cum custodibus. Illi, so they departing, guessing that a verb's going to be here. It's not just blind memorization of words and vocabulary. You need to know the grammar, and you have an incentive to learn it because you want to play the game better. It's kind of gamified. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone, signantes lapidem, and setting a watch, cum custodibus. So I'm not sure about this one. Sure. Just guessing horribly. I'm wrong. Muniero, it's like they're walling it off. Or municipal, etymological root, throwing that out there. Yeah, this one's wrong. And it's red. Azor autem, this always genuit when you hear the genealogy. Sadak autem genuit Achim. Achim autem genuit Eliud, etc. Pretty easy. And when you play this game, by the way, you always see autem as the second word or particle of a clause. There are no commas or periods. You have to pay attention to the autem and huero, enim, these conjunctions that are the second element of clauses. You don't just memorize it. It becomes a sport. Your reflexes are trained. Okay, submit. Yeah, begat. Nemo potest do obus dominis servire, aut enim unum odio habebi et alterum diliget, aut unum sustinebit et alterum blah blah blah. Non potestis Deo servire et mammonae. You cannot serve God and mammon. Okay, so alterum contemnet. It's future tense because sustinebit aut unum sustinebit et alterum contemnet. No man can serve two masters, etc. Nemo potest to obus domini servire. And I pause because I think the out coming, but the enim out, and the enim is going to be another clause. So out enim for either he will hate the one and love the other, etc. And having only 10 minutes a day, I don't want to spend it on Adler's Practical Grammar, God forbid, or Colburn, or another classic text of British education. In only 10 minutes, you really just need to expose yourself to the data. But why the Bible? Why not Cicero? Again, because we have sentence by sentence in parallel. So I can grasp the whole meaning of the Latin sentence through the English without having to analyze the Latin into its parts. But you come to do that anyway. So next. Dicebat recedite. Non est enim mortua puella, sed dormit, et blah blah And they laughed him to scorn in luderunt, maybe? I don't know. De ridebant. So something with ride. De ridebant Dicebat. And you notice that there are no quotes in this version of the Latin Bible. So you have to pay attention, and you will learn to pay attention automatically to dicens, dicebat, or ait, and all these verbs for saying when it's speech of somebody. So recedite, non est enim mortua puella, sed dormit, she's sleeping. Et siquis vobis aliquid dicterit, dicite quia dominus his opus habet, et confestim blah eos. I don't know. And if any man say aught to you, ye shall say, dicite, the Lord hath need of them, and straightway confestim, he will send them. Okay. Send, I'm not sure in this one. Dimitet eos. You notice that in the Vulgate quia doesn't always mean because. It could just mean that, kind of like quad. It's a replacement for indirect speech, which you see most of the time in Caesar, but not so often in the Bible. Et rogabant eum, ut fimbriam vestimenti eius tangarent, et qui comque salvi facti sunt, as many touched. So te tigerunt, because I know tangarent, subjunctive imperfect, it's going to transform to just straight third person plural perfect. But I don't approach it grammar first. I just have a grasp of this intuitively. Because yeah, you want to raise your probability of getting this right and also do as many as possible in a session. Submit. And every session ends with Evan de Milner singing Gaudeamo Sigitur. Hear it at the end. So it's also conditioning. It's conditioning, I guess, the mind or the soul to really expect this. It's part of a daily ritual. Like James Clear would say, you see the gym shoes, so you want to go to the gym. You eventually train yourself to have that desire to actually run, work out, and so on. And yes, we have another painting of Jerome. I'm not sure who the author is, but Memento Mori. And that is how I study Latin for about 10 minutes a day. A few minor things to say in addition. I track my sessions. I have tracked them since, if I can scroll all the way down, overwhelm the video, but I've tracked sessions since January 22nd, 2022. And yeah, you can see number of, I think, what's the number of minutes, number of exercises done or sentences played, number of new ones. And all the way on the right, it's the percentage of success. Do we really care about the success percentage in every session? No, not really. The main KPI we care about, as shown in the report, is just the number of positions we have in the Bible. That is what our coverage is. The expectation by the hypothesis is that this will lead to a lesser kind of fluency in Latin, just immersing the brain in this data on a daily basis. Yeah, so today, October 14th, you can see that, yeah, 10, I was talking, so I only played 10 verses, and 5 were new, and I have 70% correct, not too bad. I'm familiar with the Gospel of Matthew, and I've played positions or verses in other Gospels, so you kind of get the idea of what's happening from the context. So it helps to, going back to the report, kind of overstay my welcome. You can stop watching the video at this point. But it helps when you're playing the Bible. It helps to have a bounded context. I thought it was a lot harder, but also less enjoyable to just do total Bible. But you could do that. You could click total Bible, and it's just going to select positions to review and some new, depending on your fiat factor. What is fiat factor? It's rate of introduction of new exercises as you play a session. You don't say, oh, we'll only do 5 maximum per session. I prefer to set a percentage in this application. I don't have to worry about the number because I could do more or less in a given session. I could say I want to play a 25-minute session or a 10-minute session and so on. Yeah, so it helps to play in a bounded context. And one more thing, you can stop watching if you're not curious, but I'm going to cover this application. So performance only focuses on a few metrics or KPIs, focusing on new positions. New POS stands for new position. And at one point, I also wanted to track how many new positions I was adding on the weekend. The idea was that I would do 10 minutes during the weekdays because I'm an employee of a corporation. I don't have that much free time. Excuses. But on the weekend, I would have time to binge to really pay off my spiritual debts and make further progress in Bible Latin. And compos, that means cumulative positions. This is what you want to increase. So I've been playing this since about 2021, but pretty softcore back then. So over 2 years, and I would say the coverage is about 25%, 23%. As you can see, the Old Testament is much bigger than the New, and still a lot to do. So again, memento mori, and think more and more deeply on the real benefits of learning Latin towards your greater power. Wale. That's what salve, or wale. That's wale.